Steps to complete FAFSA. What is FAFSA? FAFSA is the application for federal student aid. This is how a student receives grants and loans from the federal government to help pay for college. To complete the FAFSA application, the student must be a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident. Students who are not U.S. citizens or permanent residents will complete the TASFA. TASFA is the Texas Application for Student Financial Aid. Class of 22 students will be completing the 22-23 FAFSA application using their parents' 2020 tax information. Steps to complete the FAFSA application. Step 1, the student and one parent must create an FSA ID. Step 2, wait for the FSA ID verification email from the Social Security Administration. It typically takes 24 to 72 hours to receive the verification email after you create your FSA ID. If the student is a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, but the parent is not, then the student will create the FSA ID. However, the parent will not create an FSA ID. The parent will need to hand enter the 2020 tax information into the FAFSA application. At the end of the application, the student will be able to electronically sign the FAFSA using their FSA ID, and the parent will need to print out the signature page, sign it, and mail it in to the mailing address on that signature form. Step 3. Go to studentaid.gov, click on Apply for Aid, complete the FAFSA form, then click Start Here. You will log in to your FSA ID account and begin completing the 22-23 FAFSA application. The FAFSA application has two parts. The first part is the student part, and the second part will be the parent part. On the first part of the application, the student will enter their personal information. When it starts asking questions about the parents, that's when the student says, "Parent that owns the FSA ID account, please come sit with me at the table and let's work on this together." One of the questions that's going to ask on the parent section is, does the parent want to link to IRS? It is very, very important that the parents say yes, they want to link to the IRS. What will happen is the parent will click on the link to IRS button. It will ask them if they want to proceed. They will click proceed. It will show them an IRS screen. It will ask to verify the mailing address that was on the 2020 tax information. It's very important that you enter the mailing address correctly. So once you enter the mailing address, then you will click proceed. Magic will happen and the 2020 tax information will automatically import into the student's FAFSA application. There will be a few questions that are asked, and then the student and parent will both be able to electronically sign the FAFSA. If the parent was not a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, then the parent will not be able to click the link to IRS button, and that parent will need to hand enter the 2020 tax information. For students whose parents do not click link to IRS, you will be flagged for FAFSA verification. What this means is that once you submit your FAFSA, it will process, but when you receive your student aid report, it will tell you that you have been flagged for verification. Being flagged for verification is not a bad thing, but there are additional steps you will need to complete. Students who are able to link to IRS and have the IRS information automatically imported into their FAFSA application most likely will not be flagged for verification. If you are flagged for verification for each college that you have applied to, once you have been admitted to that university and the university reviews your FAFSA application, you will receive communication from that university with the steps you need to complete to clear the verification process. Only students who are flagged for verification must complete that verification process, and you must complete that verification process with each individual university that you have been admitted to, and they will let you know what kind of steps you need to take to complete that verification process. Students, FAFSA opens October 1st. Before you can submit your FAFSA application, you must create your FSA ID. Your FSA ID is your username and password and your electronic signature for the FAFSA application. The student must have an FSA ID and one parent must have an FSA ID. To complete the FAFSA application, you must be a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident. To create your FSA ID, go to studentaid.gov. Click on Create Account. Click on Get Started and fill out the information. You must have your Social Security number to create your FSA ID. Once you have created your FSA ID, you will then be able to show your one parent how to create their FSA ID. You will want to have your FSA ID created and verified before October 1st. Once you've completed your FSA ID, you can start your FAFSA application. However, you will not be able to submit it until you have received the verification email from the Social Security Administration saying you exist. To complete the FAFSA, you are going to go to studentaid.gov. You will click on Apply for Aid and then complete the FAFSA form. Since you are a first-time person, you will click on Start Here. You will select I am a student and then log in and continue. You will log in to your FSA account. The next screen will ask you to select which FAFSA application you would like to begin, and you want to begin the 22-23 FAFSA application, and you will start entering your personal information. Remember, when it starts asking for parent information, that's when you are going to stop working on your FAFSA, and whichever parent has created the FSA ID, that is when you will ask that parent to sit with you to work on your FAFSA application. It is vitally important that if your parents have created the FSA ID, that once they receive the verification email back from the Social Security Administration, that they link to IRS and automatically import their tax information. If you have an older sibling who already attended college or is currently in college, then your parent likely already has an FSA ID. That parent does not need to create a new FSA ID. They just need to make sure that they know how to log into their existing FSA ID account. So once you are able to, you go in, you start your FAFSA. You're going to enter in your personal information just as it asks. Then when it starts asking for parent information, you will call the parent who owns the FSA ID and ask them to sit with you to complete your FAFSA application. Once you have finished entering all the information, then the student will electronically sign the FAFSA using their FSA ID, and the parent will electronically sign the FAFSA using their FSA ID. If the parent was not able to create the FSA ID, then there will be a print icon. The parent will print out the signature page and will mail the signature page into the mailing address that is listed on that signature page. Students often ask, what is the FAFSA or TASFA deadline? Technically, the deadline for the 22-23 FAFSA and TASFA is going to be June 30th, 2023. However, the state of Texas has a priority deadline for students to complete the FAFSA or TASFA by January 15th of 2022. So priority consideration, submit your application by January 15th, 2022. Additional forms may be required. Private and two-year institutions may have different deadlines, but you will always want to make sure and check with the financial aid office at the university you are applying to see if they have an earlier priority deadline. For example, the priority deadline for financial aid at UT Austin and Texas A&M College Station is December 15th of 2021. So for priority consideration for those schools, you will want to make sure that you have your FAFSA or TASFA applications submitted prior to December 15th. But for the state of Texas, the general priority deadline is going to be January 15th, 2022.
So, you filled out the FAFSA. Now what? The information you submitted will be processed by the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Federal Student Aid, and the colleges or career schools you listed will be notified so they can begin their process of awarding aid. The great thing about filling out the FAFSA online is that you can check its processing status immediately. This comes in handy when you're thinking, I wonder if it went through. Within a few days of filling out the FAFSA, you'll get your Student Aid Report, or SAR. You'll hear that abbreviation again, so just remember, your SAR is your Student Aid Report. Basically, it summarizes all of the information you submitted on the FAFSA. You can access your SAR online at FAFSA.gov using your FSA ID, which is your username and password. Check your SAR for any mistakes. Then make corrections if you need to, but only if you estimated your tax information or provided incorrect information the day you filled out the FAFSA. On your SAR, you'll see reference to your EFC, or Expected Family Contribution. This number is used to determine your eligibility for federal student aid. It doesn't mean you actually have to contribute that amount. The financial aid office at each college or career school you list on your FAFSA will receive your information. Each office will then use your FAFSA information to determine how much aid you can get at that school. It's possible that your college or career school may require you to verify the information you submitted on your FAFSA. If that happens, your school will tell you what you need to do. Once you're accepted into a college or career school, you'll get an award letter from the school's financial aid office that explains the aid being offered to you. We'd recommend comparing award letters from multiple schools. That way you can make the best decision for your situation. If you have any questions about your financial aid offer, contact the school's financial aid office. If your aid offer includes a federal loan and you're a first-time borrower, there are a few more steps before you get your loan. You'll need to complete entrance counseling and sign the Master Promissory Note, or MPN, which is your agreement to pay back the loan. Your school will provide you with the necessary information. So how do you get your money? Well, usually your grants and loans will be applied to tuition, fees, and other charges on your student account first. Then any leftover money is paid to you. Work-study funds are earned throughout the term. Remember, filling out the FAFSA is not a one-time thing. You must complete it every year you attend school. If you have questions or need more information, please visit studentaid.gov.